My wife cheated on me with her boss, but the real twist? She didn't know I secretly owned the company he worked for.
The moment my marriage died wasn't during an argument, a confession, or even the night she rejected me without explanation. It was on a random Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m. when I walked down the hallway with a mug of coffee and overheard my wife, Rachel, speaking on speakerphone loud enough to shake the foundation of our home. "Mom, I'm done with him," she said, her voice so casual it sounded like she was discussing a pair of shoes she wanted to return. I can't live with a man who thinks sleeping with my boss is such a big deal. Seriously, it's 2025, not the Victorian era. My hand froze midair. The mug felt suddenly too heavy. My brain kept replaying the phrase sleeping with my boss like a corrupted file my mind could undelete. Her boss, Brandon Cole, a man with a Tesla, perfect teeth, and the personality of a LinkedIn post, was apparently now her moral compass. On the other end of the line, her mother Patricia cackled. This was a woman who collected ex-husbands like trophies, each one richer than the last. "Oh, finally," Patricia said. "You could do so much better. Someone who understands your lifestyle." Honestly, that poor man still drives a Honda. I glanced out the window at my Honda Accord, the 2019 model I'd paid off early. The one that never broke down, never judged me, never cheated. And in that moment, I felt more affection for that car than for the woman in my kitchen. Rachel laughed. "I know. And he's so predictable. Scrambled eggs the same way every Sunday. Who does that? People who aren't sociopaths, for one." By the time she finished bragging about hiring Stephen Carter, the meanest divorce attorney in the state, I had walked silently back to the kitchen. I found myself staring at the calendar, at our anniversary circled in red ink. September 14th, a day she had once called the luckiest day of her life. 20 minutes later, Rachel approached me with a perfectly rehearsed expression. "Marcus, we need to talk." What followed was her TED talk about growth, alignment, and personal evolution, sprinkled with the grand reveal that she'd been having an affair for 6 months with Brandon and wanted a clean, drama-free divorce. She slid a folder across the counter. "I think we can handle this as mature adults." Her confidence was nauseating. I opened the folder. "Divorce papers, demands, asset splits." I smiled gently. "Okay." She blinked, completely thrown. "Okay." I picked up the pen and signed every single page like I was autographing a grocery receipt. "That's it?" she asked, her voice laced with confusion. "That's it." She left the kitchen, visibly disappointed, maybe even annoyed that I hadn't cried or begged. Because here's the part she never cared to ask about. I wasn't just Marcus Webb, the operations manager earning $78,000 a year. I was also Webb, founder and CEO of MW Consulting Group, LLC, a multi-million-dollar supply chain consulting firm. A firm that contracted with Sterling Corporation, Brandon's parent company. Brandon, the man sleeping with my wife, was the same man who signed off on invoices that paid me $180,000 annually, without ever questioning where the money went. Rachel thought she was leaving a man who made scrambled eggs and drove a Honda. She had no idea she was divorcing the owner of the company her boss depended on. While she was cheating, I did what I do best: structure, analyze, document. I created a spreadsheet I titled Project Karma and tracked every single inconsistency: credit card charges, GPS data, hotel expenses, every single late night at work. I made graphs, correlation tables, and even a predictive betrayal model. It was the only thing that kept me sane. And then came the famous 10 a.m. Saturday divorce meeting. Rachel had transformed our dining room into a corporate boardroom. She had French bottled water, croissants, legal pads for discussion points, and a PowerPoint presentation titled, "Moving Forward, a Proposal for Mutual Growth and Separation." She actually used a laser pointer. Slide 1 was a Venn diagram of her emotional needs. Slide 2 was a comparison of her soaring ambitions versus my alleged mediocrity. Slide 3 was a pie chart showing why she should get 60% of everything. I took a croissant and genuinely complimented her formatting. Then I signed her draft agreement. Why? Because it was meaningless? My attorney, Jennifer, had already filed the real documents proof that everything Rachel thought we owned actually belonged to MW Consulting Group, a company I founded a year before we ever met. The house? owned by the LLC, the cars, company vehicles, the savings, all business accounts, investments, corporate assets. Every marital asset she planned to split 60-40 was legally untouchable. She thought she was marrying the employee. She married the employer. The gala was the delicious cherry on top. She forced me to attend Apex Marketing's annual event so she could parade Brandon around in front of me like a prize pig. At dinner, when his CFO asked where I worked, I said casually, Sterling Corporation. The man's face lit up. Because Sterling owned Apex, I saw Rachel's fork tremble. Brandon bragged about contracts, late meetings, and signing off on major vendor relationships. I just nodded politely, sipping my wine, knowing full well I was that vendor. When the gala ended, Rachel whispered, "Thank you for being so supportive tonight." I smiled at her the way a cat smiles at a goldfish in a bowl. The next morning, it happened. Rachel's phone rang. The caller ID read, "Mr. Carter." She answered with a bright, professional tone until her expression completely drained of color. Her voice dropped to a panicked whisper. "What do you mean he owns everything through an LLC? What do you mean none of it counts as marital property? What do you mean I signed the lease? The Honda? What does the Honda have to do with anything?" She turned toward me, her voice shaking. "What is M.W. Consulting Group?" "My company," I said, buttering my toast. 7 years strong. You lied to me," she shrieked. "No," I replied calmly. "You never asked?" She went pale. Everything she had planned gone. Everything she thought she'd take untouchable. When her lawyer, Carter, learned the truth, he practically aged 10 years on the call. The fallout was swift. Brandon's wife, who sat on Apex's board, discovered the affair soon after. Brandon was fired within 24 hours. Rachel was fired for ethics violations the very same day. She lost her job, her reputation, and her entire fantasy future. She bet on the wrong horse, and in the end, all she was left with was the bill. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more.